Hey guys, how's it going? Back at you again with another review on the channel, and one of the last reviews I have to bring you from the Toronto International Festival, one of the biggest titles at the festival, and it seems strange reviewing this in lieu of what has happened and transpired over this past week, but there is hope that the Department of Justice is going to put an injunction on the Netflix and Warner Brothers deal, so we might be okay to review this movie. And of course, I want to review this anyway because it is from one of my favorite recent film franchises and one of my most anticipated films of the year. And that, of course, is Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery from Rian Johnson, starring Daniel Craig once again as Benoit Blanc, with Josh O'Connor, Glenn Close, Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington, Andrew Scott, Kaylee Spaney, Daryl McCormick, and Thomas Hayden Church in tow. And this follows the story of Father Judd, played by Josh O'Connor, who gets sent to this new parish where he has to cross paths and contend with Monsieur Jefferson Wicks, played by Josh Brolin, and kind of have to figure out what happens along the way. I'm not going to get into the story because, of course, it is all about what the mystery is in Knives Out, and I don't want to give any of the juicy details away. And so this, like I said, was one of my most anticipated movies of the year because I love the first one, and Glass Onion, it was my second favorite film of 2022, and still is. I know, I have my nitpicks with it, but I absolutely think that's one of the tightest screenplays ever constructed, so I have to give it credit there. I absolutely love what it builds to, and I love what he's been doing with this franchise. So naturally, I had a feeling that this might end up being one of my favorites of the year. And unfortunately, I will say that I didn't even quite love this. This is my least favorite of the three. But with that being said, I think that this is still a damn good movie, as it always is with Rian Johnson and these Knives Out films. And I just think, yet again, the cast he assembles here, while I don't think they are utilized as well as previous ensembles in the series, I do think that there are a lot of great performances here, specifically that of Josh O'Connor as Father Judd, because unlike the other movies, well, okay, I wouldn't say Benoit Blanc was the lead of the first movie. He was more of a supporting character. That's sort of the role that he takes here. This is Josh O'Connor's movie through and through, and he is absolutely terrific here. This guy keeps proving movie after next that he is a generational talent who's here to stay. One of these days he's got to get nominated for an Oscar, but I really think that this is one of his deepest and introspective performances, and really you get to see him struggling with his own sense of faith. And it's like this year's Conclave, but put into a Knives Out movie. And it really is a very spiritual film. Easily the most spiritual and gothic, might I say, of all the Knives Out movies, which I think suits this particular story quite perfectly. And I really love how you get to see Father Judd's struggle between what he has to do in the situation and how that affects his faith and ideals, and how everybody around him sort of has their own agenda that doesn't necessarily have to do with why he's there, why he's, there preaching for the Lord. It's really such an interesting dynamic, and I think that Father Judd is probably one of the most well-written characters in the entire series. I really do think that Josh O'Connor cements this movie in a way that really not many actors could have done exactly the way he did, and I really loved his performance here. He is easily the standout. Well, actually, no, I'll get to that. But Daniel Craig, once again, is great as Benoit Blanc. I mean, this is such an iconic role, another feather in his cap after Bond, and I think he's utilized well here, especially a great counterpoint to Father Judd and his ideals. I really find that this role suits him like a glove, no OJ, and I do think he grounds this movie in the way that any Benoit Blanc mystery should be grounded. And also, there are so many great supporting players here. It's also weird seeing Jeremy Renner in this, considering they went on about his hot sauce in the last movie. I really don't get that. It doesn't ruin the movie. He's good in it. Maybe you're not thinking about that while you're watching it. It would have been, honestly, more distracting, like, hey, that guy looks like Jeremy Renner. But I do think that he does quite a good job here. But the standouts, I have to say, are Josh Brolin, who gives one of his best performances here, really. Josh Brolin's great in everything, having a great year after Weapons, and then this. Truly, truly wonderful performer, and I think the dynamic that he has with Josh O'Connor is really quite an interesting thing to see play out on screen, but I think they match each other perfectly, like almost everybody in this movie. And everyone else is kind of utilized in a pretty, decent way. I think Kerry Washington gets some standout moments, but really the true standout of this movie, as it should be to nobody's surprise, is Miss Glenn Close, who I think is very deserving of an Oscar nomination, though obviously we just saw the Globe nominations. I don't think that's happening, but Glenn Close is one of the greatest in the business, so this should be no surprise, but she really gets a few amazing, amazing moments. Maybe the best performance in the entire Knives Out trilogy. If it is a trilogy, I don't know if he's doing any more, but this is just some tremendous work from Close here. One of her best performances, from what I've seen at least. I still got to dive a bit deeper beyond Fatal Attraction, The Wife, Hillbilly Elegy, so still a ways to go, but I really do think she deserves some recognition for this. And yet again, the rest of the ensemble very well utilized, and like I said, this deals with the thematics of faith and what that means and how people sort of bastardize that very similarly to Conclave, as I previously mentioned. But I do think that it is still extremely funny for the most part addition to this franchise. I think where I kind of have an issue with this movie is some of the jokes. And I thought the weakest part of Glass Onion, as someone who's a mega fan of that movie, were some of the jokes that come off a bit cringy, don't quite land or hit their mark. And they really go overboard with some of the jokes here that are so on the nose and just run on forever. I was literally rolling my eyes at a couple moments here because this is just glaringly apparent to me that this is some of the weakest dialogue that has been in any of these movies. And for the most part, the dialogue is still great, but there's a couple moments where they just really go overboard with it. And yeah, it definitely brought my enjoyment of this movie down. There's also a couple of things that I don't think quite add up, because usually these screenplays are pretty airtight. But there's a couple details, and maybe this will alleviate on rewatch, that I think come off a bit convoluted. And even though I understand what they were doing in regards to some of the presentation of said details, I don't think it comes across, definitely not on first viewing, and that's why I'm excited to watch this when it comes out on Netflix, because this could, I could bump this up ever so slightly and say that I love this movie, but as it stands, I do think that this is a really compelling addition to the series. I think maybe the best mystery as to how, we get to its ultimate conclusion. It's probably the most exemplar of a whodunit, because unlike the other two movies, it's a little bit more obvious. This one really keeps you guessing in a way that the other two don't, and so I have to give it that at least. And it really is the darkest of the three. I mean, there are some incredibly dark moments that I did not expect or even think that he would go to. Like, this isn't one of his earlier movies, right? So usually these are pretty light, even though they're dealing with weighty topics and themes. No, this one, there are some moments in this film that are like horror adjacent, or straight up horror for that matter, and that's what I loved about this movie. It appropriately reflected and suited the location where they were at. And so, for that, I really do have to give Wake Up Dead Man a lot of credit, because this just fits snugly into the Knives Out canon. And, I mean, I don't know if he's going to keep doing these movies, but I really would love to see him do that, because I think that he continuously brings us quality content. Well, maybe that's not the word, especially if we're talking about Netflix. Maybe that's why he won't make another one. Who am I to say? But I really do think that this is another, not an absolute knockout, but I think another worthy and solid addition to the series. So I'm going to give Wake Up Dead Man an 8 out of 10, a very strong one at that. Like I said, there is a possibility that I will end up loving this on rewatch, even if it isn't quite as fresh or original or as finely tuned as those first two movies. But yeah, guys, you let me know if you've seen Wake Up Dead Man. Down in the comments below what you thought of it. Is it your favorite of the series? I know some people really love this. Maybe I'm in the minority in saying it's my least favorite, but I definitely would love to hear all your thoughts on that when it hits Netflix later this week. And please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more movie reviews like this one. I think the next movie that I'm going to review is The Voice of Hind Rajab, which is one that I am extremely excited to talk about and share my thoughts with you guys on. So, stay tuned for that. And so much more. I'm almost done with these TIFF reviews. Only 2 movies ago, baby. And then we are back in business, back to, routinely scheduled reviews, I hope. But thank you for your patience in sticking with me all this time. I will talk to you guys very, very soon.